My name is Olivia Hartman. I am 72 years old, a retired office administrator who once managed chaos for a living. These days, my office is smaller. It's my kitchen, a kingdom of neat cupboards and quiet mornings. That morning, the quiet felt different, heavier, like the calm before a storm. In front of me sat a handwritten list from my daughter Claire. The paper smelled faintly of perfume and entitlement. At the top, in her looping handwriting, it said 15 people. No gluten, no spice, no fun. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I laughed, not the joyful kind, but the kind that tastes a little like surrender. She wanted a Christmas dinner. I smiled. I'm on vacation. This year, you direct the chaos. I booked a flight to Spain. Her face priceless. The camera would have caught it, the faint shake of my head, the sparkle of disbelief mixed with relief. But the truth is, that line didn't start in the kitchen. It started with a phone call 3 days earlier. It was Tuesday evening. The wind outside howled against the Vermont windows. I had just poured hot tea when my phone buzzed with Claire's name. Her voice came through bright and commanding, the way young executives talk to assistants. "Mom, I need you to handle Christmas dinner this year. 15 people from Mark's family. You know how you cook." I nearly spilled the tea. 15, I repeated, as if maybe she'd said 5. 15, she confirmed cheerfully. You love cooking anyway. I pictured her smiling, probably scrolling through her phone while assigning me her holiday workload. Before I could respond, a man's voice echoed in the background. "Mark, my son-in-law." "Tell her to keep it mild," he said, laughing. My mom's stomach can't handle flavor. My lips pressed together so tightly the words almost cut through them. I swallowed what I wanted to say and managed a small, polite chuckle. The same chuckle every mother learns when her adult children forget she's human. Claire continued listing requests. No dairy for Aunt Linda, extra gravy for Uncle Jeff, and, "Oh, please tidy the house. Mark's family will notice dust." Her tone was cheerful, efficient, cruel without meaning to be. To her, this wasn't exploitation, it was delegation. When she finished, she said lightly, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll pay you back for the groceries," as if repayment could buy back dignity. The line stayed quiet for a beat. Then I heard myself ask softly, "Claire, do you even hear how that sounds? What do you mean? I said you're asking a 72-year-old woman to cook for 15 strangers because your husband's kitchen is too small." She sighed. The kind of sigh that says, "You're being difficult." "Oh, Mom, don't start. You're free anyway, we're all working. You love hosting." The word free hung in the air like smoke. Free time, free labor, free service, free as in worthless. I ended the call with a polite promise to think about it, but when I hung up, the promise dissolved into steam from my teacup. That was the moment I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, something quieter and sharper clarity. I looked around my spotless kitchen, the same room where I'd cooked thousands of meals for people who never said thank you. And for the first time, I thought maybe this year the oven deserves a break too. I walked to the window. Snow was beginning to fall, each flake perfect and unapologetic. I whispered to myself, almost laughing, "This Christmas I'm not cooking, I'm flying." I didn't know where yet, but I knew I was done being the family's background noise, done being the invisible help who kept the holidays running. I poured another cup of tea. It trembled in my hand, but it wasn't weakness, it was adrenaline. Then I sat down, looked straight ahead. If this were a film, it would be the moment I turned toward the camera and said with absolute calm, that was the moment I realized this Christmas I was done being useful. That night, I opened the drawer under the kitchen counter. Inside sat my old office ledger, bound in fading brown leather. Its corners were soft from years of use. Its pages smelled faintly of ink and habit. I used to log salaries, invoices, and employee expenses in that book. Numbers never lied. People often did. I placed it on the table next to my cup of chamomile tea. The steam curled upward like a question I'd avoided for too long. My fingers hesitated before flipping the first page. There it was, my handwriting, neat as always, but this time the columns weren't for work. They were for my daughter. Claire, expenses, 2018-2023. Car repair, $845 hours. Rent assistance, March, $200. Plane ticket to Chicago, $420. 35 birthday gifts for her kids, $980.27. Loan for new couch, $1,300. Grocery support, countless, but I wrote $1, $200 just to keep the math honest. By the time I reached the last entry, my pen had pressed deep into the paper. I read the total twice, once with my eyes and once with my pulse. $14,970.62. The number stared back, bold and shameless. I could almost hear it whisper, "You gave too much." I leaned back, took a slow breath, and said aloud, "Not to the room, but to the ghosts of my own guilt. That's not charity. That's quiet exploitation disguised as love." The clock ticked steady, relentless like a metronome marking every unpaid favor. My tea had gone cold, but I didn't move. I turned to a fresh page and wrote one line across the top, interest, self-respect. Then came the flashback. It was 5 years ago, the week after my husband's funeral. The house smelled of lilies and stale condolences. Claire had sat on the couch, holding my hand. Her mascara had smudged. Her voice trembled as she said, "Mom, don't worry. I'll take care of you now." At the time, I believed her. It felt safe, like a promise built on love. But promises, I would learn, can age badly when mixed with convenience. Within months, the roles had shifted. "Mom, can you watch the kids for an hour?" turned into, "Mom, can you pick them up every Thursday?" "Mom, could you lend us a bit?" until payday became, "Mom, you understand we're saving for a house." And somehow, the sentence, "I'll take care of you," transformed into, "You'll handle it, right, Mom?" One evening, I caught my reflection in the microwave door while scrubbing their baking tray. My hair was tied back apron on sweat on my forehead. I looked like the help in my own life. I remember muttering half to myself, half to the ghost of my husband. Guess I got promoted from widow to unpaid domestic manager. It should have been funny, but my laughter cracked halfway. Back in the present, I drew a line under the total and wrote, "Emotional cost incalculable." Then to lighten the sting, I added a note in parentheses. Audit closed. Client refused to pay. A small chuckle escaped me. Comedy had always been my armor. If you can laugh at a tragedy, it can't control you. The kettle clicked off again, a small sound, but it made me flinch. I poured another cup, watching the water swirl golden in the cup. There's something calming about repetition, pour, stir, sip, survive. But under that calm, a thrill hummed. The kind you feel right before doing something bold. I realized I was no longer angry. Anger is loud. This was quieter, sharper, like a scalpel. I closed the ledger, gently smoothing its worn cover with my palm. For decades, I'd believed love meant solving problems. That night, I learned love could also mean stopping the cycle of solving. Outside, the snow was falling heavier. Each flake landed without apology, a lesson in boundaries if nature ever taught one. I took one final sip, then whispered to the empty room, "Some debts aren't financial, they're moral." The phrase hung in the air, steady and precise. I slipped the ledger back into the drawer, this time locking it. A quiet action, but it felt like a signature closing the books on decades of unspoken servitude. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, I felt the faintest flicker of power, the kind that starts small like a spark in dry wood. Tomorrow I decided I'd start a new account. Olivia Hartman, expenses 2023 forever. Line 1, plane ticket to Spain. Line 2, freedom priceless. Steam rose from my tea. The house breathed in slow rhythm. I answered. The air felt crowded with lists, deadlines, and assumptions. I watched the steam twist. It looked like surrender leaving my cup. "Claire, I've made a decision. Yes, I'm not cooking." Silence widened. Even the refrigerator hummed like a witness under oath. Then came laughter, bright, disbelieving, a sound meant to erase reality. "Mom, you're joking." "No, I'm traveling." Another pause arrived, a new quiet where gravity seemed to move. Traveling, where Spain. For the first time in decades, my no was a declaration, not permission. She cleared her throat. The manager returned, tidy, composed, persuasive. Let us be practical. Flights, hotels, transfers. You would hate logistics. I have managed harder things. Logistics will not defeat me. You are 72, she said. Winter travel alone is reckless. Something inside me stood. Not anger, spine, the posture of ownership. I am 72. I am not retired from courage. She softened, buttering the request since butter was already banned elsewhere. We can simplify. You host, we bring dessert. Everyone wins. Everyone except the chef, the dishwasher, and the utility payer. A drawer of quiet years slid open. Cutlery clinked against memory. You love cooking, she said. You always say it calms you. I love cooking when invited, not conscripted, not for 15 critics. Her sigh sharpened. I pictured her hand on hip, eyes rolling. This is tradition. Mark's family expects warmth. You embody warmth. Tradition without consent is habit. I am done performing unpaid hospitality. Thunder rolled through the line, not weather, entitlement changing shape. Is this about money, she asked. We can reimburse. Keep receipts. It is about respect, a currency missing from your budget. I stood at the window. Snow fell like shredded paper, clean, final. Cars hissed past. A plow roared. The street shuddered with impatience. Claire filled the quiet with scheduling. Fear often dresses like logistics. We can switch to potluck. You handle turkey and sides. You are rearranging deck chairs. The ship is still sinking. She ignored the metaphor. Urgency rarely understands poetry at speed. Fine. What would make this acceptable? Name your condition. Nothing I said. Acceptance is not for sale. Her laugh returned, thinner now. Tinsel stretched past its limit. Mom, you cannot cancel Christmas. I am not canceling Christmas. I am canceling my exploitation package. I looked at her mailed list. It sat like a summons. I folded it once. Then again. Paper learned humility. Spain in winter, she snapped. What about safety? What about scams I will research? Book through an agent. Carry insurance. Choose bright streets. You could slip, she warned. Ice stares strangers. Terrible headlines. So could anyone fetching ice from my garage during parties. The tea cooled. Bitterness steadied the edges of resolve. Mark's mother is sensitive, she pressed. We promised a gentle menu. I am sensitive to being treated like infrastructure, not a facility. The radiator sighed awake. Even the pipes approve these boundaries. We can compromise. Smaller guest list, maybe 10. Final offer. Reduce headcount. The math still devalues my labor. She went quiet, the kind that counts reputations and fallout. Then bargaining began. Crumbling systems always bargain before breaking. We will clean before and after. We will bring wine. You negotiate chores. I negotiate autonomy, not equivalence. Her tone cooled. The meeting turned. Minutes grew sharp and legal. Are you punishing me? She asked. For asking too directly, I am protecting me. I am late. I start now. She reached for the oldest lever. The child inside her tugged mine. Please, Mom, one last time. Then we take over forever. I glanced at the drawer. The ledger breathed. Numbers remember. Forever wilts under light. Promises age like milk in heat. No, I said. Calm as snowfall. The last time already happened. A floorboard shifted. The house nodded. Timber respects decisive women. You are choosing Spain over family. What will people say? They will say truth. I finally took a holiday from servitude. I hung the towel on the oven handle. A retired flag. Who convinced you? She demanded. Whose idea was this recklessness? The ledger, the clock, my back, my heartbeat. Unanimous vote. I opened my laptop. The hinge creaked like a welcoming gate. The screen glowed, stage lights rising on a private premiere. I typed a question. Comedy perched on my shoulder like counsel. Spain in winter, safe for elderly solo travelers, I entered. Images bloomed, beaches, plazas, scarves, oranges stacked like suns. A bold caption declared, "Perfect for reinvention." I smiled. I am a woman who appreciates clear signage. "Are you booking right now while I'm on the line?" "Yes," I said. "Consider these minutes. Action items assigned to Olivia." Paper rustled through the speaker. Her list crumpled under new physics. "You will regret this," she said. Fear borrowed authority for emphasis. "I regret years, not days. I regret teaching you my time was free." Her voice shrank. Hallway small. The child after curfew returned. "What am I supposed to do? They expect dinner." They bought flights. Order catering, scale the menu, feed them truth. Leaders solve problems. Wind leaned on the windows. The house answered with a thoughtful groan. "I cannot believe this," she said. "Abandoning tradition before Christmas. I am abandoning self-neglect. Keep traditions that honor dignity." Silence returned, then a cut of words, quick as paper slicing. "If you leave, do not expect sympathy when things collapse. I am leaving, not disappearing, available for love, not logistics." I opened the agency site. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. "Spain," I whispered. The word warmed the room better than heat. "Fine," she said. "Brittle. Do what you want. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. May accountability join your table." I ended the call. Relief arrived like a clean winter breeze. The kettle clicked. Steam climbed like a standing ovation for boundaries. I lifted my cup. Courage scented the air, citrus and honey. My hands were steady, my voice steadier, my future audible. The next morning, Vermont looked like a postcard dipped in frost. Snow clung to the roofs, glittering like powdered sugar on forgotten pies. I wrapped my scarf, twice stepped outside, and felt the cold slap my face, the kind of cold that demands honesty. My boots crunched through the white crust of morning as I walked toward Main Street, past the bakery that still smelled of cinnamon, past the pharmacy where the clerk always called me sweetheart. The town was familiar, but my steps weren't. For 40 years, I'd walked this same route to deliver forms, signatures, errands, never purpose. But today, my legs had their own agenda. The sign caught the sunlight first, Luna Travel Agency, painted in soft blue letters that shimmered against the snow. Inside, warmth rushed at me. A small bell chimed overhead, the kind that makes you feel welcomed, even if you have no plan at all. Behind the counter stood a young woman, maybe 26, with a ponytail that seemed immune to gravity. Her name tag read, Eva Morales. Her eyes carried that crisp brightness of someone who still believed in beginnings. "Good morning, ma'am," she said, cheerful but not forced. "How far do you want to go?" I took a deep breath. My voice came out lower, steadier than I expected, far enough to forget I ever cooked for ingrates. Eva tilted her head, then smiled, not the polite kind, but the kind that says, "I understand more than I should." "Spain it is," she said, typing fast, her nails clicking like tiny drumbeats of destiny. Spain. The word rolled through me like warmth spreading after a sip of brandy. Spain, a place I'd only seen on calendars, the background of someone else's dream. Eva's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Do you prefer a group tour or independent travel?" "Independent," I said. "I've been part of a group for 72 years. It's time for solo." She laughed, a bright sound that felt like sunlight breaking through habit. "I love that," she said. "You're going to fit in perfectly." Her screen glowed blue, then white, then blue again. Every flicker looked like a door opening. She turned the monitor slightly toward me. "We have a winter itinerary, Madrid, Barcelona, Seville, and Granada. It's called the Reinvention Journey." The irony nearly made me choke on my own amusement. "Reinvention?" I asked. "Is that a standard package or a miracle service?" Eva grinned. "Around here, they're the same thing." As she printed the brochure, I caught my reflection in the glass door behind her wool hat, red cheeks, eyes alive. For the first time in years, I looked like a woman on the verge. Eva handed me the pamphlet. 3 weeks, all hotels rated 4 stars, breakfast included. December 20th, departure. Returning January 10th. Perfect. I said, though my heart thudded like I was signing up for skydiving. She reached for her keyboard again. Payment method. I slid my debit card across the counter. My hand trembled not from fear, but from adrenaline. The card machine blinked its small green light. Beep. Then the printer roared to life, loud, decisive, mechanical. It whirred and spat out the ticket with the same rhythm as a lock unfastening. A sheet of paper curled forward, warm to the touch. I stared at it, the black letters forming my name, my destination, my rebellion in ink. Eva tore it neatly and handed it to me. Congratulations, Mrs. Hartman. You're going to Spain. I took it carefully, holding it up toward the light filtering through the frosted window. The morning sun struck it just right. The letters glowed faintly gold. This isn't paper, I whispered. It's permission. Eva's smile softened. That's exactly what travel should be. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The heater hummed. A poster of Barcelona swayed slightly on the wall. Behind Eva, a small TV played muted travel ads, waterfalls, vineyard cities at night. Any special reason for the trip, she asked, her tone gentle, not prying. I thought about lies, about saying something simple like a vacation or a lifelong dream. But truth has its own flavor once you start tasting it, because no one should grow old waiting for permission to live. Eva's eyes glistened. Then you're going at exactly the right time. She handed me a pen to sign the receipt. I noticed my hand no longer trembled. The signature flowed clean and steady like someone signing a peace treaty with herself. Then came the comedy beat, pure, ridiculous human. Eva asked, "Would you like to add travel insurance just in case I chuckled? After the last 40 years, I think I've survived worse than lost luggage." We both laughed, and something inside me loosened like an old knot, finally untied. As she stapled my documents, she said, "You'll love Spain. Everyone there eats late talks, loud, and lives long." "Then I'm already halfway Spanish," I said. When I turned to leave, Eva called after me. "Mrs. Hartman, one last thing, remember to pack light. You won't need much when you're free." Outside, the cold air met me again, but it didn't bite this time. It felt clean like a page after the first word is written. The street shimmered with the afternoon sun, snow melting into silver puddles that mirrored the sky. I walked slowly, ticket clutched tight in my glove heart, beating a rhythm I hadn't heard in years. Each step sounded different, less like footsteps, more like punctuation marks in a story finally rewritten. When I reached home, I placed the ticket on the kitchen counter right beside Claire's crumpled list of demands. Paper versus paper, order versus freedom. I looked at both and smiled. The old list smelled faintly of guilt. The new one smelled of ink and future. I tore Claire's note in half, not out of anger, but ceremony, and slid my ticket into a small frame above the stove. Action motif, complete the machine, had printed more than travel details. It had printed my escape. I poured myself a new cup of chamomile tea, leaned against the counter, and whispered to no one in particular, "Permission granted." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faintest sound of laughter of possibility. The house, once heavy with duty, now hummed with a lighter sound anticipation. I sipped my tea, savoring the warmth. It tasted different, sharper alive, like the beginning of something unrepeatable. By the next afternoon, my phone looked like it had survived a political scandal. 27 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and a text from Brenda that began with "Dear Olivia," the universal prelude to polite aggression. I set the phone on the counter, turned the kettle on, and waited for the steam to rise like stage fog. Then it rang again. Brenda. I answered not out of curiosity, but because every story deserves its antagonist. "Olivia," she said sweetly, the kind of sweetness that erodes enamel. "Maybe this isn't the best time to abandon family traditions." I stirred my tea. "Brenda, you mean the tradition where I cook clean and smile?" There was a pause, the sound of someone recalculating their diplomacy. "Well, she said you do it so well." "Thank you," I said. But excellence isn't the same as obligation. Click. Silence. I let it hang there like fine china suspended mid-air. 10 minutes later, the front doorbell rang. Not once, but in a rhythm, 2 short, 1 long, the family knock. Through the frosted glass, I saw them, Claire with her anxious purse clutch, Mark with his permanent scowl of entitlement, and Brenda in her pastel coat of command. I opened the door slowly, savoring the moment. "Surprise," Claire said with forced brightness. "Oh," I said. "Is it Christmas already?" They filed in without invitation, trailing tension like perfume. Mark made a beeline for the refrigerator, opening it as if searching for his own reflection. Claire began unloading grocery bags onto my table, muttering ingredients like a spell to summon obedience. Turkey cranberries, green beans. "Oh, and Mom, I got the gluten-free flour just in case what I asked." "You accidentally cook," Mark turned from the fridge, already frowning. "Where's the big roasting pan? You always use it." "In retirement," I said, like its owner. Brenda clasped her hands together as if conducting a prayer group. "Olivia, we don't want to argue. We just thought since you have the space, you can use the kitchen." I interrupted, setting down my mug. "But the chef's off duty." That landed like turbulence. Claire blinked. "What do you mean, off duty?" I walked into the living room and returned with my wine-red suitcase, my second declaration of independence. I placed it in the middle of the kitchen floor with a satisfying thud. Mark blinked at it as though it were a live bomb. "You're not serious." "I'm packed," I said. "Spain doesn't take jokes seriously." For a second, no one spoke. Then Brenda took a breath sharp enough to slice tinsel. "Olivia, dear, we all need breaks, but perhaps not during the holidays." "I agree," I said, sipping my tea. "Which is why I'm taking mine now." Claire's eyes darted to Brenda for backup, then back to me. "Mom, we can compromise. I'll handle decorations. You just manage the cooking." "That's not compromise, Claire," I said. "That's delegation." Mark slammed the refrigerator door shut. "You're being unreasonable." "No," I said calmly. "For the first time, I'm being mathematical. Input versus output. Labor versus appreciation. The numbers don't balance, they all stared. Somewhere outside, a car alarm went off, perfectly timed comic punctuation. Claire broke first. "Mom, please don't do this. It's just one dinner." "One dinner every year for 5 years," I said. "One dinner that costs me 2 weeks of shopping, 3 days of cleaning, and a month of recovery." Brenda crossed her arms. "But you love cooking." "I used to love it," I corrected. "Before it became performance art for ungrateful spectators." Mark muttered something about family obligations under his breath. "Mark," I said, "if family obligations involve unpaid labor and no gratitude, then congratulations, you're describing feudalism." Brenda's mouth twitched. "We're just trying to preserve the family spirit." "The family spirit," I said, "is alive and well. It's just not serving dinner this year." Then it happened. One of the grocery bags slipped off the counter, bursting like a comedy cue. Cranberries scattered across the floor, rolling in every direction, bright red marbles of chaos. Claire gasped, "Mark, help me." They both knelt, scrambling on hands and knees, bumping into each other like frantic toddlers. Brenda fluttered behind them, shouting orders. "Careful with the organic ones, those cost double." I stood there, arms crossed, sipping my tea, the very image of serenity in a hurricane. "Careful," I said. "Chaos stains." Mark glared up at me. "You're just going to stand there." "Yes," I said. I find the view from the sidelines refreshing. They froze, realizing they were literally cleaning up their own mess. The metaphor was almost too poetic to waste. Brenda straightened, wiping imaginary dust from her sleeves. "This isn't very festive of you." "Neither is servitude," I replied. Claire sat back on her heels, defeated. "Mom, I don't understand what's happening to you." I smiled gently. "You're watching it. It's called self-respect." Mark huffed. "You think running away to Spain will solve everything?" "No," I said, "but it'll give me better food and fewer complaints." Brenda's tone softened, shifting from command to condescension. "You're hurt, Olivia. We understand." "Maybe after some rest, I don't need rest," I said. "I need distance." The kettle whistled again, sharp final like a judge's gavel. I turned it off and poured another cup, unbothered by the 3 stunned figures in my kitchen. Claire picked up the last cranberry, her eyes shiny with frustration. "Mom," she whispered, "what will we do without you?" "Learn," I said. "Trial by turkey." I set my mug down, looked around the kitchen, the battlefield of 1,000 unspoken resentments, and felt something inside me settle. It wasn't triumph. It was balance. Mark muttered something about hotels. Brenda sighed dramatically, and Claire looked like she might cry. But I didn't feel cruel. I felt clean. As they argued quietly among themselves, I rolled my suitcase toward the hallway. The zipper hummed like applause. I paused by the doorway and turned back once more. "Don't forget to preheat the oven," I said. They looked up confused. "For the turkey?" Claire asked. "No," I said with a grin. "For reality." And then I walked out, leaving them in a room full of cranberries and consequences. That evening, as twilight dipped the Vermont hills in gold and lavender, there was a soft knock at my door. Not the impatient hammering of family, but the gentle rhythm of someone who respected silence. I opened it to find Margaret Doyle standing on my porch, wrapped in a plaid scarf, her gray curls glowing under the porch light. She held a bottle of wine like a peace offering, so she said, one eyebrow raised, "You finally retired from motherhood." I laughed, the kind that escapes before pride can stop it. "Officially clocked out this morning. Then it's about damn time we celebrate," she said, brushing past me with the authority of a woman who had long stopped asking permission. The house, still humming from earlier chaos, began to feel lighter. I fetched 2 glasses, the nice crystal ones Harold and I had kept for special occasions. Apparently, liberation counted. Margaret popped the cork with a satisfying thunk. She poured generously like a woman pouring out history. To the brave, she toasted. To the tired, I replied. We clinked glasses. The sound was clear and defiant, like church bells for the irreverent. Margaret took a sip, then leaned back in her chair, her face softening into memory. "You know," she began, "I left my husband when I was 60. I nearly choked on my wine." "You what?" She grinned. "Sold the house, packed 2 dresses, and drove cross-country in a convertible that leaked when it rained." I stared at her. "And you never looked back, only to check the rearview mirror, make sure he wasn't chasing me." We laughed so hard the cat fled the room. She waved her glass in lazy circles. "Best thing I ever did. Freedom smells like gasoline and cheap Pinot." "That's poetic," I said. "It's true," she replied. Every mile felt like an apology I didn't owe anyone. I studied her for a moment. The wrinkles that had learned to smile without fear, the eyes that glowed like they'd seen both fire and flight. There was no bitterness in her, just oxygen. "You ever get lonely?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Sometimes. But loneliness is easier to fix than resentment. You can invite company over for loneliness. Resentment stays even when you lock the door." Her words landed softly the way wisdom always does when it comes from someone who's lived it. The kettle whistled, and I poured us both a little tea to chase the wine. Margaret accepted hers, balancing it on her knee like a ritual. So she said, "What's your next act, Olivia?" "I bought a ticket to Spain," I said. Her eyebrows shot up. "Alone?" "Yes." She whistled low. "Damn, girl, that's bold." I shrugged, pretending calm I didn't fully feel. Someone has to start a new tradition. She smiled, eyes narrowing like she was testing my resolve. "You remind me of me." The night before I left, my daughter told me I was crazy. I told her, craziness is just freedom with better stories. I couldn't help but laugh. "Margaret, you're dangerous, only to people who think comfort is virtue." Outside, snow began to drift, lazy, silent, forgiving. We sat in our mismatched armchairs framed by the golden light of a single floor lamp. The radio, still tuned to the local station, began to play "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." Margaret hummed softly, her voice gravelly but warm. "That song used to make me cry," she said. "Now it makes me laugh. All that talk about being merry and bright. They should have written a verse about surviving the people you love. That would have been too honest for radio, I said. We clinked glasses again. She sipped, then leaned closer. You know, freedom doesn't always smell like gasoline. I looked at her curious. Sometimes she said, her tone shifting from mischief to truth. It smells like courage. I went quiet. The line sank into me like heat from a fire. Courage. The word sounded heavier than wine, lighter than guilt. I thought of Claire's voice, the constant demands, the invisible leash of family expectation. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a deserter. I felt like a pilot midair, steady, deliberate, choosing altitude over approval. Margaret reached for the wine bottle again. Here's to courage, she said, refilling our glasses. And to daughters who will one day understand it, even if too late. The window glowed with faint streetlight. Snowflakes twirled like tiny dancers outside. I leaned back, feeling my shoulders unclench for the first time in months. The room smelled faintly of cinnamon wine and something softer release. Margaret raised her glass toward me once more. To women who stop saying yes when they mean no. I met her glass halfway, and to friends who remind them why that matters. The clink this time sounded almost musical. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the porch wind chime, but instead of shivering, I smiled. Through the window, I could see the faint glow from Claire's house across the hill lights, flashing silhouettes moving in frantic patterns. Probably some new crisis about the oven or the turkey. I took a long sip and watched from afar, detached but peaceful. Chaos, I said softly. Looks better from a distance. Margaret chuckled. So does bad lighting. That's why I never go to family dinners after 6 p.m. We both broke into laughter again, the kind that feels like therapy without the copay. For a while, we didn't speak. We just sat there, two women of a certain age, wrapped in the quiet confidence of survival. No guilt, no noise, just the hum of the radio and the promise of a different kind of holiday. I reached over and poked at the fireplace switch. The electric flame flickered to life, painting the walls in orange and gold. Margaret raised her glass to the fire. To the flame, she said, may it never burn us, only remind us we're alive. I smiled. The fire hummed, and for the first time in years, Christmas didn't feel like an obligation. It felt like warmth earned, not expected. 3 days later, Claire came alone. Her coat hung open. Wind clung to her hair. Exhaustion ringed her eyes. I opened before she could knock again. The house was warm. Chamomile drifted from the kitchen. On the table lay the green ledger. Beside it, my passport and the Spain ticket aligned like instruments before takeoff. Mom, she said, voice quivering, everyone's counting on us. I let the sentence hang, then I tapped the ledger steady as a metronome. You've been counting on me for 30 years. Time to balance the books. She swallowed hard. Families help each other. Yes, I said. When both sides give. I give, she said. I call. I visit. You call when you need favors, I replied. You visit with a shopping list. She blinked fast. You can't leave me to handle this. You're 38, I said gently. Not 3. She sank into a chair. Her gaze slid to the suitcase waiting by the door. So you're really going? I am. Is Spain worth blowing up Christmas? Spain is worth protecting my dignity, I said. Christmas will survive without my apron. A plow passed outside, steady and indifferent. Claire's breath slowed. The theatrics thinned. Mom, she whispered. Mark can't manage his family. They expect a show. Then he can hire one, I said. Caterers exist. Restaurants open. Tutorials are free. She almost smiled. You'd trust Mark with YouTube and fire. That is why extinguishers exist. I said deadpan. Her laugh broke and fell. You're enjoying this? No, I said. I'm calm. There's a difference. We sat in a silence crowded with years. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked. She reached for the ledger, then paused. What is that? The truth in columns, I said. 5 years, dollar by dollar. She opened it, her shoulders lifted, then fell. You kept track. I kept faith, I said. The numbers told me when faith became extraction. She traced a line: car repair, rent, flights, groceries. Mathematics cures denial, I said softly. Mom, I never meant to use you. I know I said. You meant to love me. Intention does not cancel impact. What if I plan the dinner and you just supervise? No, I said. Supervision is labor with lipstick. She glanced toward the stove. At least help me set the menu. This is the menu, I said, and slid the passport and ticket into the light. You wanted a Christmas dinner. I booked a flight to Spain. This year, you direct the chaos. She stared at the documents. When did you buy it? The morning after, I said no. Was I that bad? You were untrained, I said, in boundaries, in gratitude, in the difference between a mother and a resource. She pressed her palms to her eyes. When she lowered them, the girl I raised flickered behind the woman who learned to command. I don't know how to do this. You start small, I said. List the tasks. Share the load. Ask for help. Pay for what you cannot do. Say thank you. Accept no. I hate asking for help. So did I said. Then I mistook endurance for love. She looked at the floor. Brenda says, you're punishing us. I'm correcting a system, I said. Punishment seeks pain. Correction seeks balance. You always make it sound simple. It is simple, I said, not easy. She paced like a teenager when math wouldn't bend. What if I fail, then you learn, I said. She watched snow skitter down the street. I used to think you liked being needed. I did, I said. Until needed ate respected for breakfast. If I ask for one recipe, would that be disrespect? I opened a drawer and pulled out a card. Roasted carrots with orange and thyme. 4 ingredients. She took it carefully. Thank you. That's asking, I said. Different from assuming. Her eyes filled, then cleared. If I fix this dinner, will you come next year? I will, I said to any table where respect is served. She nodded once. Okay? We stood at the table like negotiators closing a humane treaty. I reached for her hand. She let me hold it. Mom, she said quietly, I'm scared. Me too, I said. That's how you know you're flying and not taxiing. We both laughed, a small, honest sound. The kitchen timer pinged. We ignored it. Claire squeezed my hand, then let go. When do you leave? She asked. Tomorrow, I said. Early. She swallowed. Then I should go. There's a lot to plan. At last I said a realistic budget. She picked up her purse, then hesitated. Can I call you if I really get stuck? Yes, I said for advice, not rescue. Deal. I placed the passport and ticket flat on the table. The room felt like a runway. Take a good look, I said. Even the radiator clicked like wheels passing seams. Even the lamp hummed like an engine. My house, once a cafeteria for obligations, felt like a hangar for departures. I remembered Harold teaching me to breathe before takeoff. Slow in, slower out. Claire read the name on the ticket. Barcelona first, then Madrid. I said nothing. Silence can be a stern teacher. It can also be kind when words might bruise. Slowly. Snow tapped the window like metronome. She did. Her face drained, then steadied. The ledger, the ticket, the suitcase. The story finally added up. She zipped her coat without drama. I'll let you know how it goes, I said, and remember to preheat reality. You're impossible. I'm improving, I said. She took one step, then another. At the threshold, she paused and turned back. I laid the passport and ticket down once more with ceremony. You wanted a Christmas dinner, I repeated. I booked a flight to Spain. This year, you direct the chaos. Claire's silence widened. Her hand tightened on the knob. Color evacuated her cheeks. Her face priceless. JFK Airport was dressed in tinsel and tension. Families in matching sweaters hurried past children dragging reindeer backpacks, flight announcements overlapping like a chaotic choir. I stood in line for security, holding my red passport case like a shield. The agent squinted at me. Traveling alone, ma'am. Yes, I said, by design. He smiled politely and waved me through. Once inside the terminal, I found my gate 47B New York to Seville and sank into a chair by the window. Outside, the December light slanted across the tarmac. Snowflakes flirted with the plane wings. I took a sip of airport coffee that tasted like burnt courage. "Empty seat next to you," a voice asked. I looked up. A tall man in his 70s stood before me wearing a navy jacket with a faded fire department patch. His face was lined, but his smile had the steady confidence of someone who'd seen flames and kept his calm. "Depends," I said. "Do you snore?" He laughed a low rumble. "Only when I dream of bureaucracy." "Then you're safe," I said, moving my bag. "Olivia, Henry Kaplan," he said, settling down beside me. "Retired firefighter, professional widower, and rookie traveler." "Seville?" I asked. He nodded. "Visiting my daughter. She teaches art history there." "You visiting myself?" I said. He chuckled. "Now that's a trip worth taking." We watched the runway in companionable silence until the boarding call echoed through the gate. As we joined the slow-moving line, Henry leaned closer. "You look like a woman who just broke a rule." "Several," I said. "Family ones." "The best kind," he replied. "Onboard fate, or the airline seated us side by side." He helped me with my carry-on, and when I thanked him, he waved it off. "I've carried heavier things than that. Once hauled a 300-pound man out of a bathtub because he thought deep frying indoors was safe." I laughed the first real laugh of the week. "That sounds like my son-in-law." He grinned. "Then I'd better stay alert." The plane rumbled to life. Lights dimmed, engines roared. My fingers found the armrest and clung. Henry noticed. "First long flight." "First flight where I'm not returning home afterward," I said. He nodded. "Good. Home's overrated when it forgets to welcome you." The announcement crackled overhead. The plane began to taxi. My heart hammered against the seatbelt. I hated takeoffs, the loss of ground, the helpless tilt of gravity shifting allegiance. Henry glanced sideways. "You okay?" "Define okay. You're upright breathing and not screaming. That counts." The nose of the plane lifted. My grip tightened. He offered his hand, rough, warm, steady. I hesitated, then took it. "Easy," he said. "Engines sound scarier than they are." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what I used to tell my daughter about adulthood." We both laughed. Outside, the world tilted into clouds. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, Henry leaned back. "So, Ms. Traveler, what's the story?" "Divorce, betrayal, midlife mutiny, retirement from unpaid emotional labor," I said. "I resigned from motherhood." He whistled softly. "Bold move. You burned the old rule book." "Good," I said. "It was outdated." He grinned. "Wish I'd met you 20 years ago. Might have saved me a decade of guilt trips." The flight attendant rolled by with drinks. Henry ordered whiskey. I asked for tea. He lifted his cup toward mine. To turbulence, he said, "I'm not a fan." "Then toast it anyway," he said. "It's the only way to get above the storm." We clinked cups. The plane hit a bump, then steadied. I didn't flinch this time. Voiceover in my head, half humor, half truth. For once, turbulence didn't scare me. Dependence did. Henry dozed off soon after, his breathing deep and rhythmic. I stared at the clouds below, endless and forgiving. Somewhere between the Atlantic and the edge of sleep, I thought about all the times I'd been the calm one during someone else's storm. The hands that had clutched mine Claire's when she was small Harold's during his final hospital days, and how I'd believed calm meant control. Now calm felt different. It felt earned. The cabin lights dimmed. The engines hummed a lullaby older than fear. I closed my eyes and pictured Seville orange trees, sunlit plazas, strangers who didn't know my history. The idea of being unknown felt luxurious. Hours blurred into quiet. The captain announced sunrise over Europe. Henry stirred, blinking. "Still alive, still free," I said. He smiled. "Same thing if you ask me." We both leaned toward the window. Below us, clouds broke apart like curtains, revealing a watercolor dawn, streaks of pink and gold spilling across the horizon. Henry tapped the glass. "See that?" he said. "That's redemption lighting." I smiled. "And what's the soundtrack?" He gestured toward the hum of the engines. "That's your new heartbeat, Olivia. Sounds like Forward." We sat there watching as the sunlight spread over the wing. The flight attendants began their breakfast service, but neither of us moved. "Do you think it's too late to start over?" I asked quietly. He looked at me as if I'd just asked the most logical question in the world. "You're in the air, aren't you?" I laughed. "Touché." He reached for his coffee. "Here's a trick," he said. "Every time the seatbelt sign lights up, remind yourself that's the plane saying, 'Hang on, we're just adjusting to higher air.'" I nodded, feeling something shift again. Not fear this time, but the small, clean thrill of possibility. The plane cut through the clouds. The sky opened wider. Spain waited somewhere beneath the horizon, bright, unpromised, and mine. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back. Barcelona woke like a brass trumpet. Sun flared on tiled roofs. Gulls stitched white cursive over blue. I sat at a cafe near the harbor notebook, open espresso fierce beside a bowl of sugar. Salt rode the breeze. The air tasted like beginning. I wrote day 4. Freedom tastes like espresso and ocean salt. The line rang clean inside my chest. I tore a croissant. Flakes fell like new snow. Spoons chimed. A guitarist tuned nearby. My hands no longer shook. My phone buzzed. "Claire. Mom." I burned the turkey. Everyone's upset. I watched the water. Somewhere in Vermont, smoke and panic. I typed my reply. "Then you're learning." No apology. No plan. A sentence like a steady hand. Another buzz. A photo appeared. A bird charred to comedy, heroic in failure. Her text followed. "We ordered paella. Brenda apologized. Mark is soaking the pan. I am breathing." "Good," I wrote. "Breathing is the secret ingredient." I put the phone face down and let sunlight pour across the table. The waiter refilled my water with the grace of a man who had never been asked to justify joy. Families strolled the promenade. None required my rescue. Relief felt like shade after a long, hot sermon. Voiceover in my head, patient and true. For decades, I mistook being needed for being loved. Turns out, love survives even after you stop cooking. I closed the notebook and stood. Ships slid by with medieval calm. The harbor glittered like coins. Stone underfoot kept time beneath my heels. Far off, Gaudi's spires teased the skyline. Across the square, a familiar wave, Navy jacket lighthouse posture, Henry Kaplan traveler by oath, firefighter by history. "Lunch," he called. "As long as it's not for 15, I said. He laughed and fell in beside me. We turned down a narrow street where orange trees leaned over balconies. Shadows dappled the pavement. A flamenco poster shivered. The dancer's dress looked alive. "Your daughter survived the holiday," he asked. "Barely," I said. "Which is the point." We found a small restaurant with fogged windows and hand-lettered menus. The waiter suggested sardines and an orange and olive salad. Henry ordered sparkling water. I asked for a dry white. He lifted his brows. "Look at you," he said. "Ordering like a free citizen." "I intend to make it a habit," I said. We ate slowly. The sardines arrived, glistening skin, crisp and proud. I lifted the spine with my fork. The meat yielded clean. A good fish teaches tenderness. The trick is not to force. Henry watched the harbor between bites. On calls, the worst enemy was a locked door, he said. People bolt themselves inside. Fear is a carpenter that never sleeps. I left my door open for years, I said. Everyone walked through. And now I keep a key. I decide who shares heat. He grinned. Promotion well earned. My phone vibrated again. The tone felt softer. "Thank you for not yelling. I am embarrassed. Dinner still happened. Pride earned with ash lasts longer," I typed. Henry glanced at the screen. "You fly better when passengers pay for fuel." "Careful," I said. "You sound like me." We paid. The waiter insisted we try Tehran. It tasted like almonds and holidays belonging to no one else. The afternoon stretched. The sky looked freshly laundered. "Walk," Henry asked. We wandered toward the beach. The sand was cool, the water restless but friendly. Children built forts against waves that ignored diplomacy. A kite tugged at its string. A dog disputed its leash. We faced the shore. The air buzzed with salt and laughter. A small plane drew a banner high above advertising a concert I would never attend. For the first time in years, my calendar answered to my pulse. "Miss Home?" Henry asked. "I miss the woman I used to be there," I said. "She came with me." "Good," he said. "Traveling alone is overrated." A wave chased our shoes. We retreated like children. My laugh arrived unprogrammed. Henry pointed at the horizon. 2 ships passing with inches to spare. "That is choreography. It is respect," I said. "Boundaries at sea." He nodded. "On land, too." We sat on a low wall, shoes sandy, hearts light. I opened the notebook again and wrote, "Freedom is not escape. It is ownership. Keep what you love. Sell what you never owed." A gull landed bold as a bill collector and eyed my crumbs. I flicked one piece. It bowed and lifted off a white parachute. Henry checked his watch and winced. "My knees hate cobblestones. Worth it. Pain with meaning is tolerable," I said. "Pain without consent is not." He laughed. "Put that on a pillow. I will write it in ink," I said. We drifted back as the light turned to honey. Guitars tuned. A drum thumped like a new heart. I wanted to buy postcards and send none. At a corner, Henry hesitated. "Dinner later." "Yes," I said. "But only for 2. We parted for the afternoon. I walked beneath a canopy of laundry and sky. Every balcony held a life I did not need to manage. Every window framed someone else's hunger. I felt full. Back at the cafe, I took a final espresso and watched the day bow out. The waiter brought the bill with a smile that said nothing about obligation. I tipped well because generosity feels good when clean. I checked my phone before tucking it away. One last message from Claire. "Mom, I think I understand. Thank you for going." I breathed in the sea. I breathed out the past. Bells counted the hour and refused to ask permission. Somewhere, a tram clanged forward, bright as resolve. I wrote one more line gently. "Love is not a job. It is weather. You dress for it. You do not control it." Then I closed the notebook and let the Mediterranean hold the silence. 6 months later, Vermont finally exhaled. Spring rinsed the hills. Maples flushed green. The river let go of ice. My house looked brighter, less haunted by expectation. I set a mug of chamomile on the sill and studied the painting above the mantel. The red suitcase by the sea, cobalt and cream, a wine-red rectangle at the water's edge. That was me. Not luggage, a landmark. The door clicked. Margaret let herself in with a jaunty knock anyway. She carried a bag of beans and 2 mismatched mugs. "Inspection," she declared. "I'm here to ensure peace is still operational." It passed the stress test, I said. 2 holidays, 0 breakdowns. She grinned and set the kettle on. "Any emergencies that require free labor?" "Only mine," I said. "Tune-up for the bike, dental check. Savings moved to an account with an adult password. Progress," she said. "Freedom smells like fresh grounds." On the table, a postcard waited, a yellow tram on tiled streets. Henry's handwriting marched across the back next stop, Lisbon. "I'll bring the maps. You bring the nerve." I laughed and penciled a reply, "Deal," but no 15-person meals. Margaret poured. A simple piano theme drifted from the radio. We carried our cups to the living room. The painting watched us with perfect silence. "I named it," I said. "Let me guess," she replied. "Not your maid." "Close," I said. "The red suitcase by the sea." She raised her mug. "To objects that are declarations." The doorbell rang, a careful tap wrapped in caution. Through the glass, I saw tulips. Claire stood on the porch, hair pulled back, shoulders squared, mouth uncertain. I opened the door. She held the bouquet like a white flag. "Hi, Mom." "Come in," I said. Margaret squeezed my arm. "I'll guard the coffee," she whispered, and slipped to the kitchen. Claire stepped inside and scanned the walls. Her gaze landed on the painting. "You made that," she said. "I did. It looks strong," she added. "So do you," I said. "Sit." She perched on the edge of the sofa. Silence made room for honesty. "Mom," she began, "I finally get it. I'm sorry." She set the tulips on the table and sat very still, as if motion might crack the apology. "You don't owe me a speech," I said. "You owe yourself a standard." She nodded. Christmas was a mess. The turkey was charcoal, the sink flooded. Brenda discovered humility. Mark discovered the laundromat. "Tragedy turned curriculum," I said. She almost laughed. After everyone left, I cried. Not because it failed, because it happened without you and the world didn't end. Something else did. What ended? "The idea that love equals endless access," she said. "That if you weren't useful, I was abandoned. That idea can rest." She looked around the room. "Your house feels different." "It is different," I said. "It only admits respect." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "I brought something. Not money. A note I scheduled my dentist hired a sitter, opened my own account, and learned to roast carrots with orange and thyme. Also, thank you for not rescuing me." I folded it carefully. "Apology accepted," I said. "Lesson learned." "Truly," she said. "I'm learning." Margaret reappeared with refills and a conspirator's wink. "Hi, Claire. I left you the good chair. It forgives posture." "Hi, Margaret," Claire said, smiling for real this time. We spoke of small things that were actually large. Claire's project at work, a budgeting class, a short letter from Brenda without adjectives. When Claire stood to go, she paused before the painting. "I used to think your suitcase meant you were leaving me," she said. "Now I think it means you came back to yourself." "I did," I said. "And there's room here for visitors who knock." At the door, she hugged me. Not the clinging kind, the respectful kind. "I love you, Mom. I love you too," I said, tasting peace unsweetened. After she left Margaret and I carried the tulips to water. "What now?" she asked. "I might take Henry up on Lisbon," I said. "I like cities with tiled reasons to wander." She laughed. "Send a postcard that says, 'Dear Margaret Freedom still functions.'" Afternoon settled. The piano found a gentle cadence. A breeze nosed the curtains. I opened my journal. The pages smelled faintly of salt and ink. I wrote, 6 months later, the quiet does not accuse me, it thanks me. I let memory cue the closing reel. The airport windows, the wing turning into sunrise, Barcelona tasting like permission, the text from Claire singed but braver. I faced the painting. Some goodbyes or gates, some returns or rewrites. Henry's postcard caught the light again, bright as a beacon. I pinned it beneath the calendar. May held no obligations yet. That felt like possibility, not vacancy. On impulse, I rolled the red suitcase from the closet and checked its wheels. They hummed, ready. I set it by the door, not as threat, but as promise. Dusk softened the yard. I switched on the lamp. The robin tucked into a pine. I poured the last of the coffee and stood at the window. The glass held my reflection, and the street beyond layered like a truth I had finally learned to read. My voice softened into the room, a benediction. She wanted a Christmas dinner. I smiled. I'm on vacation. This year, you direct the chaos. I booked a flight to Spain. Her face priceless. The piano thinned to a final phrase. The light leaned toward night. But the real gift that year wasn't the trip I said. It was my peace, permanent. The room received the words. Somewhere far off, a train threaded the valley steady as breath. I closed the journal, turned down the lamp, and let the evening hold. Fade to quiet. Piano soft as mercy. Tonight you've just heard my story. A story about freedom, about saying no and finding peace that finally said yes. If this journey reminded you of someone in your life, someone who's always given too much or forgotten how to rest, share this video with them. Maybe they need to hear that peace is not selfish. It's overdue. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Type your city in the comments. I read every one of them. And if this story spoke to your heart, click subscribe, tap the bell, and stay with me for the next chapter. Because sometimes healing starts not with noise, but with silence, a suitcase, and a choice.